Are you a woodworker who wants to be more creative but just doesn't know how? In this little video, I want to share with you guys my process for being creative, identifying your style, and how to develop your creative instinct. Because it's something that you have to develop. It's not something that you're just born with. Sure, there are people who are more creative than others, but it's like a muscle to work at it. So there's a couple points that I've written down that I just want to share with you guys, because in front of me, I have 4 different iterations. This is the first, second, third, and fourth. And it's been a journey, but there's a couple things I want to share that you guys can learn from. So the first thing I have is that you want to find your style. Now, I'm a photographer. I have done hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales over the years, and I've learned some things along the way. One of the biggest things is you have to have a style, otherwise your work is incoherent and you're not known for anything. So what I like to do is go onto Pinterest or Google, doesn't matter, find things that you like, put them together into a folder, and you will notice that there will be common elements you see again and again and again. So years ago, I was doing my laundry and I noticed that most of my clothes were either gray or blue. So my pants are blue, my shirt's gray. And I was like, I think I really like gray and blue because most of my stuff is gray and blue. And so I have a folder on my Instagram of all the furniture that inspires me. And I began to realize that there's certain things that I'm gravitating toward. So I don't have a lot of curvatures, for example, in my work, some, but there's things that I like more than others. So, go and figure out what appeals to you. Notice common and recurring themes. Now, the other thing that you want to think about is how to develop creativity. And there are 2 principles. I have iteration and limitation. So as you can see here, I have 4 different iterations. Now, what's nice about a small piece like this is I can afford to do these projects because I'm not using tons of lumber, so it's a lot cheaper, but I'm still able to practice essential skills each time I do this. So there's different joining methods. Throughout all of these, simple, I have a joint here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's kind of like a tenon in a groove. This is with pocket screws, this one as well, and this one uses loose tenons. So 3 different joinery methods. So let's talk about the idea of iteration. So every time you do something, you want to make incremental changes. You don't want to do big changes all at once. First of all, that can become very overwhelming, and you don't need to do that. Right? Just focus on something that can be a little bit different. So in this case, I like the overall shape. You can see that's mirrored here, but I thought, well, what if we were to put a drawer here? I haven't done a lot of drawers, at least when I made this. So that was a new element to it that added functionality, but also created a challenge and allowed me to create something a little bit different. And there's some other little small details here and there, but you can see how these are related. Now, I would say before we get too far ahead, whatever you choose to do, find a purpose behind this. So for me, I had leftover ply, and I thought, it'd be nice to have a little bookshelf, a tabletop bookshelf. It's for storing my books. And then this one was about my children. This one was for a friend. This one's a commission. So find a purpose behind what you're doing, because that also helps lead you and also helps carry you through the project, because sometimes you can get bogged down, but when you have a purpose that actually sustains you. So limitations, there's a couple different things I have down. So I have material limitations, tool limitations, technique limitations, and time. So let's talk about time. You've probably seen challenges where people say, okay, here's a cutting board in 1 hour, 3 hours, and 3 days. So if you want to, choose a simple object that you want to create, and then challenge yourself. Say, okay, what if I do a 1-hour build? What if I do a 3-hour build? What if I do a full day build? So that's one way you can limit yourself, because when you limit yourself, you become more creative. Let's talk about material. So maybe you just say, I just want to use what I have on hand. That is how I produce this one right here. I had a board roughly maybe 3 feet long, 5 inches wide, and there's no way I was gonna get a panel like this. No way. So I said, okay, well, I've got a nice scrap of walnut that I can't do a whole lot with, but it's perfect for here. And then, I have my rails and stiles for this. And that was one of the limitations, was let me limit my material choices and limit it to one board. Talk about tools. You may say, okay, well, let me just try to use hand tools, or let me try to use just power tools, or limit which hand tools and which power tools, because that will also affect the design of it. Let's talk about material. If we talk about material, let's talk about techniques. So as you can see here, this is a tenon essentially, and a mortise. It's open, and in here we have tenon and mortise as well. You can't really see it. Whereas with this right here, we have pocket hole screws. Now, each of these presents a challenge in its own way and affects the way in which you build the aesthetic as well. So again, of limitations, we have material, tools, time, and techniques. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about these, because you can see here, going from this to this, they're quite different compared to this. In many ways, the overall form is much more similar here because, well, you can see that I have made this slanted cut. Sorry, there's a better word for that, I'm sure, but I'm just blanking right now. That being said, I really liked this negative space. So take a look at this. I have included it here. Now, would I have loved to have had it here? Not really, because I don't need to see, I don't need to see the sides of this right here. So, but I still love that element, because when I staged photos of this, I could see the actual titles and everything. I thought, that's kind of cool that I can see that, right? So I wanted to carry it over here. Plus, it's almost like you can have handles with it. But I have done different pieces showing this kind of style. And one thing I've noticed is I've been gravitating more and more towards oak and then having a nice walnut accent. Why? Well, I love the color contrast. So that's one thing to consider too is, are the elements complementary to each other, or are they contrasting each other? So contrasting would be, light and dark, whereas complementing are things that are more similar to each other. This is the way that I understand it. Now, I have a degree in French literature, not in art history, so forgive me. But one thing too I think about is, I had a very angular design here where I used more rounded edges. So again, that was a little bit of a departure, not a huge one, but a little bit was, how can we add some more curves to it? But I still kept here, you can see here, these interior lines have not been softened with the round over. So next time you're saying to yourself, not very creative, just remember these things, okay? I got it written down nice and neat. First, get inspiration, right? Collect those images, things that appeal to you, and say, okay, what are the common threads here? Then once you do that, find a purpose. Find a need that you need to build something for. Maybe it's for a child, or for a parent, or for a friend, or a sibling, or whatever the case may be. And then once you've done that, you identify the object and style that you like. Again, it's something that's within your abilities. Think about the ideas of iteration and limitation. The first time you make something doesn't have to be the last time. You can go through iterations of it. And every time you do an iteration, apply the limitations to those iterations. Think about, how can I limit my material? How can I limit my tool choice? How can I limit my techniques? How can I limit my time even? And once you do those, you do multiple iterations, soon you'll begin to see, okay, there's things that I like, things I don't like. And before you know it, you have a style. Because ultimately, what I've realized as an artist is, if you don't have a style, what are people hiring you for? You're not gonna get these custom commissions because your work looks like everybody else. So you want to develop something that is uniquely you. Well, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. I really hope that this was helpful for some of you, hopefully most of you, but if you've gotten this far, thank you so much, and I will see you guys in the next video.